Hi everyone, Alan here with our weekly Discovering Buddhism session, and I'm teaching on behalf of Vajrayana Institute. Thank you for being there, either out there live or streaming on YouTube later. Hope you're well. So we are at our third class on Refuge, 3 Jewels of Refuge. And next week's the last of the 4 classes. And next week I'll actually send out the given questions with the answers that are provided by the writers of the course. Lisa, hello. Thank you. Thanks for saying hello. Good to see you there. So we're on our third class on Refuge. As usual, I think we'll just go straight into our breathing mindfulness meditation to calm ourselves down, get ourselves in the right frame of mind. And remember, this is just breathing meditation, very simple. What we're doing is just using the breath as the object, nothing to change. We're just watching what's happening already. And part of the mind, while we're focusing on the breath, is also just looking at what we're doing. The mind is watching us, watching the breath, like a spy. That's called introspection. So we need to do that to catch ourselves when the mind wanders, when the mind gets distracted with a thought or a sound. And so the sooner we can actually notice that, then the better our practice is. Sometimes it takes a while to realize that we've actually lost the object and we've gone off into a thought, a train of thought, got carried away. So that's okay. It's all part of the practice. So when our alert mind notices that, we just gently let go. Alan Marsh says the first thing is to relax, nothing to worry about, it's just a thought. Then we just let go of the thought and come back to the breath very patiently, without getting annoyed, without thinking, oh, how hopeless we are, or we can't meditate, or whatever. It's all part of the practice. If we could do it perfectly, we wouldn't have to do meditation. It's a practice. So the more we do, the better we get at it. Okay, so let's get comfortable. Sitting, lying down, on a chair, on a cushion, cross-legged, whatever's the most comfortable. The main thing is the body is comfortable. So we begin by consciously bringing our attention to what's happening inside the mind and inside the body. Just letting go what we've just done during the day, all the busyness, all the distractions. Time to let go of the sense that we have to do, we have to be, we have to do things, nothing of that. A moment to just reflect on our good fortune to be able to do some practice, to study the Buddha's teachings together. Very rare opportunity. We're doing this to improve our own mind, our spiritual life. And by doing that, we aim to benefit other beings, ultimately to benefit to all living beings. The Mahayana motivation. Become an enlightened being ourselves. to be of maximum benefit to other beings. So we begin with the body, scanning the body with our awareness, bringing the mind into the body, feeling the weight of the body on the chair or the floor, making sure we're evenly balanced, spine is straight, shoulders relaxed, eyes either closed or gently open. Any tightness in the body we can consciously let go. Breathing, using the out breath to release any tension in the mind and the body. Allowing gravity to gently draw the body into the earth and surrendering, letting go. And now gradually giving our attention to the natural rhythm of the breath in the body. Nothing to change, just stepping aside and watching what's already happening, the natural movement of the body with each breath. One breath at a time. The full flow of the in-breath and the full flow of the out-breath. Part of the mind is also just watching what we're doing. On the alert for distracting thoughts when we leave the breath and wander off. Just thoughts. When we notice that, we've just gently let go of that distracting thought. Patiently come back to the breath. just relax. Oh, hello, Pema Wangkal. Good to see you from Bhutan. Thank you for being there. It's wonderful to have someone from Bhutan watching. Okay, so we're just now, as I always remind people, if they're new people watching either the live stream or the YouTube video, and if you want to join the group regularly and receive the notes each week, please just send me an email, Alan. I've written in the chat column there my email address, and I'll add you to the mailing list, and you can get the materials. So there's quite a lot of helpful materials for DB students, Discovering Buddha students. You get notes, you get selected excerpts of teachings from great teachers such as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's our spiritual head of FPMT. And you also get transcripts of experienced teachers who've taught these modules in Discovering Buddhism. And then each week I give notes, short notes on the topic that we're actually doing for that week. So anyone who wants to get the written materials, just let me know. So just looking at, we usually start with some questions from last week, just to revise, refresh what we did last week, where we looked mainly at the Buddha Jewel of Refuge and the Dharma Jewel of Refuge. So first question, the mind of a Buddha is said to be omniscient. Omniscient, what does this mean? What does it mean for the Buddha, that the Buddha's mind is omniscient? Omniscient in English means all-knowing. Omni is all, and sciente, that's a Latin word, knowledge. So dictionary definition is the ability to know everything. So, but in the Buddhist context, it's more than just knowing external phenomena. The external world. It also means that the Buddha mind can understand every living being's mind. So every living being's mind, and in particular, all their positive and negative qualities, particularly what is needed, what that being needs in the way of spiritual help or guidance or teaching. So it's like a super clairvoyance, understanding the minds of all sentient beings. It's very hard for us non-enlightened people to actually grasp that incredible power. But what it means is that with that ability to see the needs of each individual, because everybody's mind is different. We all have different karmic histories, karmic dispositions. We've all had, all our minds have different tendencies, obscurations, positive and negative qualities. So this capacity to know what is needed in our mind, but also they can actually provide. Particularly, this becomes more practical when we meet some of the great teachers, the guru. We meet our guru, and there are living teachers now who are able to give help like this. So this is, I'm not going to, finding the guru, finding a teacher that we can trust is important part of our path on the Buddhist journey. That's a separate module. So just trying to keep the answer short, or knowing all phenomena, physical phenomena, and also the minds of all beings. It also covers the idea of universal compassion for all beings, feeling all beings are equally regarded with the Buddha's endless compassion. So even those who may not respect the Buddha, that Buddha's attitude towards those beings is exactly the same as devoted students of the Buddha. And so the other aspects, which is probably not omniscience, but the power of the Buddha, is that they can manifest in different forms according to the needs of all beings. So they can manifest as a monk or teachers. They can manifest as ordinary people. They can manifest as inanimate objects such as bridges or food or rain, whatever's needed by the beings at that particular time. And so this idea of pervading all existence. So the Buddha is there. So even though we may not be mindful of the Buddha is always there, or omnipresent, as well as omniscient, always present, ready to help. So probably that's enough. Let's look at the next one. Explain the conventional and ultimate aspects of the Dharma jewel of Refuge. So just briefly, conventional Dharma is any teaching. So it could be the written teachings, book form. You might have, if you've been to a Buddhist center, you might notice that the traditional way of keeping the Tibetan teachings is in these long blocks of papers that are put together, a bit hard to describe, but they're actually in individual pages that are about 1/2 meter wide and wrapped up in cloth very, very carefully. So whatever form the teachings could take is the conventional form of Dharma jewel. It's also the spoken word. So the live teachings of a teacher, those words are the Dharma jewel. And of course, now we've got multimedia, so downloading teachings from the internet and accessing videos. Now we've got great fortune to be able to watch great teachers online, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So those teachings that those great masters are giving are the Dharma. And it's through the Dharma, the words of instruction, that we can follow the path. We need those words. We're human beings, so we need to listen or read to the teachings to be able to understand the Dharma jewel. So that's the conventional Dharma jewel, and it covers more than just what the Buddha taught, which are the sutras that are still available in either Sanskrit, Tibetan, or Pali. The main repositories of those teachings of what the Buddha actually taught, the historical Buddha, are in Pali, which is the language that the Theravadan tradition mainly uses, and then in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, mostly those teachings are in Tibetan, translated from Sanskrit. So the ultimate Dharma jewel is the realizations of the Dharma, so what the effect of the Dharma on the minds of beings. So the ultimate Dharma jewel is the effect of the Dharma on our minds. So by studying the Dharma, we aim to progress along the path, to clear our negative karmas and obscurations, and realize the truth of the teachings by meditation practices and so on, purification. So these, through the Dharma, often said to be the medicine, we attain a higher state, and we eventually become an enlightened being. That's the ultimate, the realizations of the teachings. So that's enough on question 2, I think. What factors have influenced or could influence your own decision to trust the Dharma? So this is just kind of a personal question. If you've been with Buddhism for a while and you've been studying, maybe reading teachings and hearing various teachers, was there a book that you read that was particularly powerful and helped or is helping you to realize that there is something of value in the Buddhist teachings? This is the process of taking refuge, when you realize that there's something very, very powerful and truthful that could help. So sometimes it could be just hearing a particular teacher. I started looking into Buddhism probably in the early 80s. My own history just was to, I think probably for some reason, I traveled to Thailand and I was extremely impressed by the culture of being a very calm place and these beautiful temples everywhere. And so when I got back, I thought I wanted to know a bit more about the religion, and which of course Buddhist. And so I started, there was probably only 1 or 2 centres in Sydney for Westerners to study Buddhism, and in the early 80s, and I was going to the teachings, little centre called the Loden Centre in Dulwich Hill, still there, and there was a Tibetan teacher, quite a high Rinpoche. Rinpoche is a highly reincarnated Tibetan teacher, and he was teaching at that centre and with a translator. So I could see, just listening to the teaching through the translator was there was some impression on my mind, but I wasn't completely convinced that there's something in it for me until I went to see Lama Yeshe at a course which was up in Chenrezig in Queensland, the Chenrezig Institute, which is the big centre in Queensland, still there. And when Lama Yeshe started teaching, just first seeing this very beautiful, the man has a kind of great presence. He's since passed away, but he and Lama Zopa are the 2 main teachers, Tibetan monks who started teaching Westerners when they left Tibet and gradually formed this organisation that Vajrayana Institute is a member of. So Lama Yeshe is the founding teacher. But he just had this incredible personality who seemed to be laughing and happy and joking. He actually spoke English, not perfect English, so there was no translator, which made it much more powerful for me. And just the words, there's something about the words and the depth of words, so simple but very deep meaning. So sometimes there's just a teacher that we connect with. Other people might have seen Lama Yeshe and not really had much effect. So it's just the minds and the teacher coming together. So that could be just hearing those words and also seeing the person there. So this question is just there's no right answer, of course, just asking if there's any particular person or book or teaching that helps to influence your decision to. You may not have taken refuge yet, but if there's something or someone teaching that helps to to convince that this is something that is worth pursuing, something very deep and helpful in these teachings. Okay, so that's just one to ponder. So let's just now look at tonight's main topic is the Sangha Jewel of Refuge, and then there's not a great deal on the Sangha Jewel of Refuge. So then after that, we'll look at what, having taken refuge, what effect it has on our behaviour. So we're not teaching this in the, not assuming that everybody's taken refuge, but some people may have taken refuge who are watching, some people may not. So there's no pressure, of course. So the Sangha Jewel of Refuge, two aspects. Ultimately, the Sangha Jewel of Refuge means somebody, a practitioner of Buddhism, who has realized emptiness directly. So this is the technical meaning. Remember that the Buddhist teachings can be divided into two baskets. Teachings on wisdom, which is basically about the empty nature of phenomena, and the teachings on compassion, loving kindness. And so a Mahayana practitioner who's had some taste or some direct experience of emptiness in their meditation. They're not Buddhas because they do not stay in that state of realization of emptiness. That's when they reach Buddhahood. But these very high practitioners who are progressing along the path to enlightenment, and they have experienced the experience of emptiness directly. So these beings are often called bodhisattvas. So bodhisattvas are those beings who are on the path towards Buddhahood. They're moving towards becoming fully enlightened beings. So they're kind of rare, and we don't, probably because we're just ordinary beings, we may not be able to spot such beings. They could be in robes, they could be our teachers, they could also just be ordinary beings. One thing I remember when I first met, the teaching that I went to in Queensland with Lama Yeshe, there weren't that many people, so we could actually go and meet Lama Yeshe if we wanted to. And I just decided to just go and say hello, and didn't, that, and also that really had a very profound effect on my what would you call it? My faith, my belief that this person is a very special being, not a normal human being. Yeah, I remember thinking this person is like the essence of all the positive qualities of everyone, all the people I've ever met, all their good qualities put into one person, and then more added, more on top of that. So very strange being. But he said, the person who just came in before you, who was just a normal-looking woman, middle-aged woman, he said, she's a bodhisattva. And I'd never met her before, but he had the power to see this woman was a very highly advanced practitioner. Anyway, that's just a side story. But it was the first time I heard the word bodhisattva, and then later I realised that what it meant she was a very highly evolved practitioner, and he could see that through his his mind. So the conventional Sangha, there are many different meanings, and I think probably the most common is the Sangha in the room. So we're actually talking about people who are ordained, monks and nuns. That's probably the most common usage of the word Sangha, someone who's in robes. So that could include not just Tibetan monks and nuns, but it could include other people from the Thai tradition, Burmese, Sri Lanka, and so on, other Buddhist Sangha. But we'd probably be also inclined to call, say, Christian nuns and monks also Sangha, because that word is the one that's used in normal speech for in the Tibetan tradition. So that's one meaning. Another more formal meaning is at least 4 ordained monks. So this for a person to become ordained by, usually a person, if they want to become a monk or a nun, they are ordained by a high lama or geshe, and to be able to do that, there needs to be 4 ordained monks in the assembly, a minimum. Just I'm not sure why, but that's the protocol. So that's another meaning. It's just the monastic community in general. I've just mentioned that. And the other one I've got there on the community of 4 types of Buddhist practitioners, which I haven't heard before. I'm just taking this, I think, from the Dalai Lama's book, monastic and lay. So remember, a Buddhist practitioner doesn't have to be a monk or a nun. So a male and a female lay practitioner, and a male and a female monastic Sangha practitioner. Not sure why. Anyway, these are just different meanings. And then Lama Yeshe, another meaning, a very general meaning, is any one of our fellow students who are on the path. They may or may not taken refuge, but they see something of value in the teachings and their fellow practitioners. And so Lama Zopa points out how important, and Lama Yeshe point out, that the reason we have centres in the West is to have a place where fellow practitioners can congregate, and so we give each other inspiration and strength, because it is quite a in the West we've got so much distraction, so much emphasis on the physical world, on just people doing anything but developing their mind. So these importance of meeting and having a community of like-minded individuals who also see benefits in the Buddha's teachings. Very powerful, very useful. And without it, it can be very difficult to survive as a Western practitioner. You need to have some sort of reinforcement. Of course, having all the online teachings and so on is something that's only happened in the last 10 or 20 years. So that's actually going to help if we're in an isolated place, a regional area where there's no centres, but we have access to these teachings through online streaming and so on. So that's something that probably in the 70s and 80s wasn't around. But it's still very useful to have centres where we can go meet the teacher, meet a qualified teacher, because most of these centres do have a geshe, a fully trained Tibetan teacher, and then they have other lay teachers and so on. So there's these wonderful centres that Lama Zopa usually calls like emergent. They're like the emergency rooms of hospitals, where instead of giving first aid and fixing up people's bodies, they fix up people's minds. They're places of themselves refuges from the normal crazy Western world that we all live in. So also, if the question comes up, is that Buddha exists? Is the Buddhism as a religion existing in a particular land or country? The test is: are there ordained Sangha there? Are there a group of people who are ordained? Not so much whether you can find the actual books or the Dharma, but the Sangha is the living Sangha who are practicing and living in vows. The vows have taken vows to observe the Buddha's teachings and Buddha's ethical behaviour. So that's minimum of I think it's 4 of those in a country before we can say that Buddhism exists in that land, in that place. Also, interesting story. You're just quoting Lama Yeshe is giving you an idea of how highly evolved Sangha are who have reached the states of being bodhisattvas. Just looking at the top of page 2, if you've got your notes, you don't need your notes, but I'll just quote, if you discover absolute truth on the first of 10 stages of becoming a bodhisattva, then you don't need support. Such a person can manifest 100 bodies, and each of these another 100 bodies of any kind of sentient being or inanimate object, including a statue. So, this is the bodhisattva at stage 1 of there's actually 10 sort of rungs before they reach Buddhahood. These are very highly evolved being can actually do that, manifest in 100 different bodies, and those bodies can manifest in another 100 bodies. So we're just told, I think this, when you hear things like this, it's quite fantastical. They're coming from highly evolved teachers, so the source is, though we can't verify it in our own mind, but we can look at the actual the quality and the qualifications of the teacher to help convince us that there must be some truth here. Just one particular teaching, when the Dalai Lama was teaching online that I was watching, and he was sort of telling stories about students who tell them about their progress as Buddhists. And he said a man came up to him and said he thinks he's reached the level of being a bodhisattva. And so His Highness probably very skeptical, and he just mentioned that this is a sign of being able to manifest in 100 different bodies at one time is the stage 1 of being a bodhisattva. And he said you'd have to have done that if you have reached level 1. And the man went away very humbled by that fact. Obviously, had overestimated his accomplishments. So let's now look at the benefits of taking refuge. So this is coming from a great teacher called Yangtze Rinpoche. So once we've taken refuge, which means not that formal ceremony, I'll talk about the formal ceremony next week, which we can take, but the actual feeling in our minds and hearts that the answer to all our problems and the end to all our suffering is in the Buddhist teachings. That's the taking inner refuge. So once we sort of take that step, these are some of the positive benefits that can accrue from that. Yangtze Rinpoche, the book actually is called just slipped my mind the name of the book. I've got it behind me. Anyway, it's on the list, the reading list on the first teachings from the first class, and I gave you the outline as a reading list, Yangtze Rinpoche's textbook. So we become an inner being. So what does that mean? It basically means that we see that there's a world in our mind that we can develop. We start getting confidence in our ability to change our mind. We see understand some of the teachings on karma, how important it is to watch our actions of body, speech, and mind, and taking responsibility for our situation. We see how karma creates our situation, and so that helps us to take responsibility rather than blaming other people, or what's going on outside. So we become less interested in the 8 worldly dharmas. Remember that from class 1, the promises that all we need is the right job, the right partner, enough money, enough worldly goods, success, and then all will be well. So we've learnt that actually can't happen, because all those they're all external things that are constantly changing and can't be relied upon. So take the mind of refuge is what this is. So we take an interest, and I guess another word for it is renunciation, just treating with all those external distractions with some skepticism. We don't actually go for refuge there anymore. We go for help, inner help, to Buddha, the teachings, the teachers, and our fellow people on the same path. So that means we take much more care of our minds and our actions. And so to speed up this process, I think I've mentioned this before, there are some things we can do, like we can take what they call lay vows for 24 hours. So we take these practices, the lay vows, which are offered in the Tibetan tradition, means that we just for 24 hours make, we recite particular prayers saying we won't lie, we won't kill, we won't steal. So it will basically be the things that we vow not to do. We also abstain from eating after 12 o'clock, some ethical things like that, behavioural things like that. And so it's just for 24 hours. And apparently the power of the vows is so great that our the effect of living in that vow for 24 hours is incredibly powerful. We can actually increase our merit, our positive imprints on our mind by doing things such as that. Lay precepts. There's so we acknowledge cause and effect. I'm just sort of not going through each point, but just getting through these points here. So the other thing that we tend to do is mix with people who are on the same track. So I remember when I went to my first retreat, which was sort of back in the 80s at Kopan Monastery with Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe in Kathmandu, Nepal. And I remember, I think it was Lama Zopa said, when you go back to your Western place where you come from and start to practice what we're learning at the retreat, how difficult it is to go back to your old friends who have not taken this new turn, this new path. So the friends may not come around so much. That's what he said. Your old friends may not come around so much. So that's basically what he's saying, is that we need to sort of surround ourselves. It doesn't mean that we give up on our non-Dharma friends, our non-Buddhist friends. In fact, it's very good to keep those friends, particularly the ones that are sympathetic to our practice. We're told that if they're actually people who are actually anti what we're doing in our refuge and our Buddhist studies, practices, then they're not going to be helpful. They actually could harm our practice. So people who are sympathetic, they may not want to become Buddhists, but they're people who are we can actually continue with. But our strongest, the sense of having a spiritual, common spiritual path is so powerful, very, very powerful bonding experience. Probably most of my friends are Buddhists, but still have quite a few who aren't, so and I respect them. We also have parents and family members, and at no stage should we try and convert people if they're not interested. But if parents, family members, interested friends ask questions, we should answer them to the best of our ability, definitely, honestly. Maybe we can refer them to books or other teachers if we don't know the answer. But again, if they're answering a question, it doesn't mean that they want to become Buddhists. We just answer the question in the context in which they ask the question. And so it may be that they would just like to know how to do mindfulness practice, which is what about the level of my late mother. She was quite interested in what I was doing. She didn't want to become Buddhist, but I gave her Life Stories of the Dalai Lama to read, which she really liked, and then a little bit of simple breathing meditation. So if you've got relatives that show some interest, respond to the level of their interest, but don't start trying to sort of overwhelm them with Buddhist teachings, or don't try and convert. That's very much against the teachings of the Buddha. Trying to convert. In fact, His Holiness the Dalai Lama does say that it is generally better for people to keep the religion they have. That's what his personal belief is. But people who have taken refuge, they've actually decided that this religion, Buddhism, is for them. So we're talking about people who have made a decision to move to Buddhism, or maybe thinking about it. So there's a good question in the readings. There's an article by Lama Zopa, by Lama Yeshe, and one of the students asked, when we meditate, is there any structure we should follow to remind us of the refuge that we have taken? So what the student is asking, when we recite, say, a refuge prayer, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the very simplest refuge prayer we take before teaching, what should he be thinking? And Lama Zopa says a very simple thing to think, because there's so much teachings on refuge. He says to recognize or recall the profound wisdom, profound compassion, and profound power of the Buddha. I'm quoting now, we recognize that through having developed these three, that totality is the Buddha. So just repeating, the profound wisdom, profound compassion, and profound power of the Buddha. There's no more significance than that. That is the Buddha. So, quoting Lama Yeshe, if I actualize, I can develop the totality of these three within myself. Not only me, but all universal living beings. With this profound remembrance and compassion for all mother sentient beings, you go into the meditation. That's good enough. Okay, so you sort of recognize the power and the wisdom of the Buddha and compassion, and the potential lies within us to also become that. So that's the outer and inner refuge, very skillful. And then in a more formal way, he outlines, I'll just read it. He says, you visualize your father on your right side, your mother on your left, or people who irritate you in front, and the people to whom you're gently attached, who you love, behind you, and all universal living beings surrounding you. And then you take refuge in the Buddha, as we do in the Lam Rim. So you imagine taking refuge together with all other beings. From the crown of the Buddha's head, different coloured light rays radiate to each sentient being, purifying their impure body, speech, and mind, and transforming them into liberating beings. So this is that way of taking refuge is also very good. After that, the Buddha dissolves into you, and you identify with the totality of the Buddha's nature. So just mentioning that, because when we do the meditation tonight, we're going to do a meditation on Shakyamuni Buddha, which has some visualizations like that. So that's the more formal, more elaborate refuge practice. But just, if you want to have a look, it's page 17 of the readings that I'm reading from, page 17. So later on, if you want to have a look at that informal type of refuge that Lama Yeshe says, where we just want to know what to think when we say the prayer, that's very powerful. Very good advice. Just a couple of, so just looking at these pointers from Yangshi Rinpoche, he says, once you've taken refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, you should abandon taking refuge in anything other than enlightened being. So what he means, what does he mean? He says, it's time to stop shopping around and just, mixing everything up, thinking that everything, all religions are basically the same. Well, there's many commonalities. But he says, taking refuge, just you recognize that this particular path is the one you're going to adopt. So he says, don't mix different religions and philosophies into a soup. We should respect other religions, of course, and learn from them. There's an incredible amount we can learn from other religions. But we use Buddha Dharma, the Dharma of the Buddha, as our central reference. So that's advice for. I think it's important to keep that in mind. Though we can, there's no need to sort of think if there's a motivational speaker coming in who we think might be more interesting than the Buddhist teachings, then we're not keeping true to our refuge. We're still sort of looking for some external, more interesting, charismatic teacher or teaching. And so sometimes I think it's in one of these extracts from Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe that they say there might be a very charismatic teacher who has the idea of drawing people in with their personality, but the actual teaching, that person's teaching, is not. It's not Buddha Dharma Sangha. It's not refuge. So don't be dazzled by the performance. Is basically what they're saying. So then time's getting on. So just keeping an eye on the clock, because I like to spend probably about 20 minutes on the meditation. And the other thing, if you do have decided to take refuge in, maybe you've done the ceremony or maybe not. So we need to do what we don't do is deliberately, we stop harming other beings, stop deliberately harming in thoughts, actions, and so on. So we take as much as possible helping sentient beings, and if not, we definitely don't harm them. So that's one of the basic first steps when we take refuge, not to potentially harm other beings. Just Venerable Donrup's transcript has some really quite good general advice, which includes, some of it just includes etiquette. He says, one thing, if you have taken refuge or at the point of that, an altar can help. Having an altar in your room, which is a place where we can actually put symbols of Buddha's body, speech, and mind, the three jewels. So we can put a statue, it doesn't have to be an elaborate statue, on the altar. We can put some teachings, which is the Dharma, and so the Buddha statue, the Dharma's teaching, and then we can have some pictures of our teachers, the Sangha, or pictures of great teachers we recognize and respect. So traditionally, the Dharma should be the highest thing on the altar. So no, the Buddha can be as high but not higher than the teachings. The teachings, remember, the reason for that is because the Dharma is the way we enter the Buddha Dharma, the Buddha's teaching. We need the teachings to, it's like the entry point for us. So it's great to have an altar because that gives us a place where we can sit each day and do some practice. There's another module called Daily Practice, which is coming up fairly soon, Discovering Buddhism Core. So we can have a place which represents and feels like it's a calm place. Keep it very clean, and on it we can actually make offerings. We can put flowers there. We can put water bowls, traditional way of making offerings with water bowls, or we can put lights, candles, or coloured lights. So we're offering these to the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So having an altar helps. And also, when we see representation of the Buddha, so tankas, pictures or statues, drawings, paintings, it's said that we should respect any representation of the Buddha equally, and not single out the ones that are the most expensive with the most gold or whatever. We respect them equally as representations of the Buddha, whether there's something that's quite small and modest, or some quite elaborate statue, very expensive statue. So this idea of not discriminating any representation we respect as a representation of the Buddha, give that statue or painting the same respect as we would as if the Buddha was there. So that's sort of leads to, if we go into a gompa, which is meditation hall in a center, there's a few things, it's gompa etiquette that we need to do. If we've taken refuge, some of them are just being respectful. We don't take our we always take our shoes off before we go in. And then if we've taken refuge, the useful thing would be to face the front of the gompa, where there'll be a Buddha statue, no doubt, or a painting of the Buddha, and to just put our hands together and show respect to that representation at the altar at the front. So some people will do full prostration. Others will just put their hands together like that. So for those, of course, if they're non-Buddhists, they don't have to show respect in that way, but they would just act with some sort of politeness. So the other thing is, if there are any Dharma books, like prayer books or paper with prayers on them, the usual way to respect that is to make sure they're not on the floor. So you put them on a cushion, at least, or on a table. So not putting anything with Dharma words on them, prayers or teaching, directly on the floor, just etiquette. And also, if possible, not stepping over copies of texts or Dharma materials. I mean, in a very crowded room, sometimes that might be difficult. So as much as practical, not stepping over Dharma material or statues or pictures of the Buddha. So other things we can do is we can, if there's a stupa, the statue, like a representation of Buddha's body, speech, and mind. So stupas are icons of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. And so they're very precious and usually filled with holy objects. And if it's a large stupa, we can actually walk around them counterclockwise. That's supposed to be a very good way of creating merit and having a good influence on our mind. And so also being very respectful to Sangha. So those who are ordained, we would normally they would be sitting at the front, and we'd be normally waiting for them to sit down before we do. So if there's a high teacher coming to teach in the room, we would stand and not sit down until they sit down. So that's just offering respect. So most of these things will be fairly obvious. You don't have to sort of go on to them too much. And so once we've taken refuge, these are general comments. It's good to remember that we've actually taken refuge, and so when we have a problem, as we all do, time to time, we would tend to look to the teaching for a solution, particularly if it's a sort of whatever the problem, we can think, is there something that's available in the teachings that can help? That doesn't mean that we become completely impractical and don't get vaccinated, or just give up all practical ways of physical give up medicine or anything Western medicine. But so we take a practical approach to this. Remember that ultimately the cause of our whatever problems we've got, whatever they are, emotional, physical, material, then are within our own minds. Okay, so we can go to the doctor, take the medicine, do the obvious thing, but then ultimately we realize that we need to do some practice and purification and so on for the longer term solution. The other recommend things, all these little hints are from Dondrup's teachings in the transcript. Venerable Dondrup is a very senior monk, an Australian monk, who's the resident teacher at Buddha House in Adelaide. He's extremely good teacher and good monk. So occasionally he comes to Sydney and teaches, but hasn't done that for a long time. So he reminds us that before we eat or drink, we can make an offering to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And probably the most basic way of doing this is to say the words Om Ahum, which is a way of realizing that the food is by nature empty of inherent existence, and we think of offering it to our teachers and to the three jewels of refuge. Okay, so I think I've just about talked myself out, and so I think probably we'll have a look at this meditation where we use a visualization of Shakyamuni Buddha. So if you don't need to look at it now, but the actual meditation is in the transcript that you've got. At the back, meditation 2, it's called Short Meditation on Shakyamuni Buddha by Venerable Connie Miller. So she's a very senior teacher and writer of one of the writers of the Discovering Buddhism course. So in the actual practice, what we do is to visualize that we are sitting with fellow practitioners, friends, family, but we are all sentient beings. And then we visualize a vision of the Buddha, we imagine. So actually, in your materials, is a picture on, first of all, I'll give you the page number. Page 58 is the meditation. On page 59 is a nice coloured photo of Shakyamuni Buddha. So that photo can help to get an idea of what the visualization is like. So we can use the photo, the picture at the beginning, and then, if possible, we can just visualize in our minds that image of Shakyamuni Buddha is before us. It's said that to have the best effect on our minds, we need to actually visualize rather than looking at the physical form. But of course, in the beginning, it's helpful to have a physical form, picture or a statue there. So there's quite a good. With the beginning of the meditation, I'll describe what Shakyamuni Buddha looks like, made of golden light, etc., etc. And then we visualize the light coming from the Buddha and going out and blessing all living beings and all those around. So there's quite a bit of visualization. If it's becoming quite a bit too much to have in our minds, you can just imagine light rather than details of the Buddha's form. Just imagine the light there, and the Buddha is there, but we just can't quite see all the details, but we imagine that as light. So then we have an attitude that Buddha is an object of refuge, and he has perfect compassion, perfect wisdom, perfect power, these three great qualities of an enlightened being. And so we make a request that the Buddha gives us blessings, frees us from our negativities and our misconceptions, our delusions, and then we visualize that the light of the Buddha is coming into our hearts and bodies and minds. So there is a mantra which you can either use or not use. You might know it. It's Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra, Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuniye Soha. So there's an option of, while we visualize the light coming into our hearts, reciting the Shakyamuni Buddha mantra. So that's an option. Don't feel you have to recite the mantra. So I'll recite it 3 times, and then you can silently recite it for a minute or 2. And then we visualize, at the beginning, we visualize white light, which purifies us. And then there's a second visualization where we visualize golden light, which is blessing us with the qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. So, and then we just visualize that the Buddha compassionately is on our crown and absorbs into us, and we receive the blessings of the Buddha. So it's quite an active visualization. So I think if it seems too complex, just visualize light. I think it's visualize that the Buddha is there and we are receiving the blessings of the Buddha. Okay. And remember that if you want to do the meditation at home later on, it's there. All the actual details are there on page 58 of the transcript. Okay, so let's get comfortable and we'll do the practice. I'll abbreviate it somewhat. Okay, so we now just begin by a few moments of breath meditation to calm the mind, coming to our stillness, calmness. And we begin by just setting a motivation for this meditation on Shakyamuni Buddha, that we're doing the practice to develop our mind so that we can be of benefit to all beings, all sentient beings. That's called the bodhicitta Vajrayana motivation. And so we begin imagining we are seated, surrounded by friends and family, and around them are all sentient beings, just like us in human form, all wanting happiness, or wanting to avoid suffering, And these beings, just like us, suffer in different ways. So we're doing the meditation not just for ourselves, but for their sake as well. So then we begin the visualization of Shakyamuni Buddha seated about 2 meters in front of us, at our forehead, the level of our forehead. He's sitting on a large golden throne made of light, and on the throne is a white lotus, which represents renunciation. Then there's a cushion of sunlight representing wisdom, and then on top of that a cushion of moonlight representing compassion. And seated on the throne is Shakyamuni Buddha facing us. His body is the colour of refined gold and made entirely of light. Nothing solid, just light. And he's wearing saffron robes of a monk, sitting in full lotus-like position. The palm of his right hand is resting on his right knee, with the fingers touching the moon cushion. Signifies he has control over all delusions. And in his left hand he has an alms bowl filled with nectar, representing the medicine which cures our delusions. His face is very beautiful, peaceful. He smiles at you with his eyes filled with love and compassion. Feel strongly that you're in the presence of an enlightened being, and he accepts you exactly as you are with all your faults. Source of unconditional love, wants to help us reach the state of enlightenment. Now we visualize rays of light emanating from each pore of the Buddha's body, reaching all corners of the universe. The rays of light are actually miniature Buddhas going out to help all living beings, and then dissolving back into the Buddha's body. Though as we feel the presence of this golden Buddha in front of us, Shakyamuni Buddha, develop a sense of taking refuge in the qualities of the Buddha's compassion, wisdom and power. These are enlightened qualities of the Buddha. And by applying the medicine of the Buddha's teachings to ourselves, we can become enlightened ourselves because we have Buddha nature, taking inner refuge like that. But then we make a request to Shakyamuni Buddha before us from our hearts, asking for blessings, that we'll become free of all our delusions, misconceptions, and develop realizations on the path to enlightenment. And then, having received our request, feel that the Buddha has granted our wish and sends purifying white light from his heart, entering our body through the crown of our head. Our body is filled with white light, purifying white light from the Buddha. All our negatives are purified. So while we visualize this white light pouring in from the Buddha, we can recite Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra. If we wish, Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha. Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha. Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha. As we recite the mantra, imagine all the light pouring into our body, receiving the blessings, purifying light of the Buddha. So secondly, we just visualize that the light changes to golden light. The golden light is actually the enlightened body, speech and mind of the Buddha. And we visualize that our body is filled with this golden light. And we feel great bliss as the light enters our mind, our body, speech, and mind. And reciting the mantra, Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha. So now, the second part of the practice, we imagine Shakyamuni Buddha comes to the crown of our head, facing the same direction as we are, and focusing on the visualized beings around us, or these sentient beings in human form, feeling great love and compassion towards them. And Buddha extends the rays of light in the form of wisdom, compassion, from his heart to all the beings around us, filling them with the enlightened body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, purifying all their negativities, and they become perfectly enlightened, experiencing great bliss and wisdom. Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha. And now finally, the final end of the meditation, we visualize the Buddha melts into pure golden light in our crown of our head and absorbs into us, to our body. And our ordinary body dissolves, and we become one with the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. This blissful, spacious feeling we have merged our being with that of the enlightened being of the Buddha, receiving his blessings and power. And so we can now rejoice that we've done the meditation and created the cause for ourselves to become enlightened beings. Dedicate any positive merit, positive imprints on our mind towards attaining a perfect state of mind, Buddha mind, where we can benefit all beings, countless sentient beings. And just concluding by I'm reading now the special dedication by Lama Zopa Rinpoche for the pandemic. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed from all sickness. May all the sickness without exception of all transmigrating beings never occur again. May the Buddha Dharma last for a long time. May sentient beings in the world meet the Buddha Dharma and achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. Dedicating to that. So that's it for tonight. Thanks so much for being there. It's great to see you there. I hope you have a wonderful night, a happy, peaceful week, and look forward to seeing you next week at the same time. Okay, take care and stay well. Thank you. Bye.